Hey guys, welcome to my capstone project. My name is Oliver. I'm from Denmark, and this is my culminating experience in the graduate program of social justice and human rights here at Arizona State University. So, without further ado, I will just start with my little show here of what my project will be about. So, my capstone project is examining how Western border regimes, particularly in the United States and Europe, produce and manage human mobility and how they obscure moral and political responsibility. So, in simple terms, I'm asking how do borders, the lines that are supposedly protecting, are actually controlling, harming, and dehumanizing people who are already among the most vulnerable in the world. My project really came out of my growing frustration with how migration is discussed in the public sphere. We often hear stories of crisis, of waves and floods and invasions and famines, etc., but we rarely look at how the so-called crisis is actually manufactured by the very policies claiming to solve it. So I wanted to unpack that contradiction and to understand what borders really do beyond their symbolic role of separating nations from one another. Um, Primarily, I have a twofold focus. First, I look at the US-Mexico border, particularly through the work of Jason DeLeon and his ethnographic study of prevention through deterrence. Um, This policy is effectively weaponizing the desert, forcing migrants into deadly terrain where they are exposed to extreme heat, dehydration, and violence. Um, this is a chilling example of what scholars like Akil Mbembe call necropolitics, which is the power to decide who lives and who dies. And what is especially troubling in this sense is that this tragedy allows the US government to avoid accountability. If people perish, it's not the policy's fault, it's the desert's. Um, De Leon's work has really helped me to see how geography itself can become part of the machinery of control. Um, then I turned to European borders, especially around the Mediterranean area and sea, Northern Africa, and Southern Europe. So while the US is using nature as a deterrence, Europe is using bureaucracy and humanitarianism. The European Union is funding detention centers in Libya, amongst other nations. It's performing pushbacks at sea, and it is trapping refugees in camps primarily outside of Europe, actually, like Moria, for example, all while using moral language like saving lives or managing migration. If anyone's interested, you can always go to scholars like Didier Fasang, Miriam Tichting, or Michel Agier. They have studied this comprehensively, and they're showing how humanitarian discourses can become a form of ethical violence, a way of accepting compassionate while a way of appearing compassionate while maintaining racial and political hierarchies. Across both regions, the US and Europe, I would argue that these practices share a common logic, the politics of containment, whether it's through physical barriers, deserts, or bureaucratic limbo. Western nations contain mobility rather than confront the structural inequalities that causes displacement in the first place. Refugees and migrants are transformed from political subjects into managed lives, people to be controlled, categorized, and kept in suspension. And I think this is a really important topic, and the project is it matters a lot to me because it pushes us to rethink moral narratives surrounding migration. So instead of asking how can we protect our borders, we should be asking what are our borders protecting us from and at whose expense. The border is not just a physical structure, it's a mirror reflecting how we value human life, and it exposes our deepest contradictions between the rhetoric of human rights and the reality of exclusion. So, Ultimately, my goal with this capstone is to show that borders are not neutral. They're deeply political, moral, and racial technologies. And understanding in this way is the first step toward imagining something different. Systems of mobility that prioritize dignity and justice over fear and control. And I don't pretend this project is providing all of the answers, but I hope it helps reframe the conversation. If we can start seeing migration as a problem, not as a problem to be solved, but as a human condition shaped by global inequalities, perhaps we can begin to envision a world where movement isn't criminalized and where care means more than containment. Um, that was it from me now. Thank you guys for listening. If anyone has any questions or want to discuss this topic with me, I would always be interested in that. But for now, that's it from me. Thank you again for listening.